Let's be real. Deciding between a Galaxy S and a Galaxy Note is actually pretty easy. The S line might be the best of mainstream Samsung, but it's the Note that's always brought something a little more. And this year, the choice is even easier. I'm Michael Fisher with Pocket Now, here to show you why in Galaxy S6 versus Galaxy Note 4, brought to you by Squarespace. These smartphones aren't just from different classes. Even though they're only separated by about 6 months, they're essentially from different eras in Samsung design. The S6 is glass on rounded metal and it's extremely smooth in the hand, while the Note 4 blends chamfered aluminum with textured polycarbonate for a much sharper, much brawnier feel. The structural distinctions make for more than just a different feel. The Note 4 seems inherently more rugged thanks to its plastic backing. If you're planning on routinely roughing up the S6, you'll probably want to invest in a case or a skin, like this one from Dbrand, to protect the Gorilla Glass, because it's non-removable. By contrast, if you mess up the Note 4's backside, you can just replace the battery door. The pop-off back cover also grants access to the Note's larger user-swappable battery and microSD slot for expandable storage. The former means you can carry a spare battery for long trips, and the latter means you can bump the Note's onboard storage up to 128 gigs, while saving a bit of money in the process. The S6 doesn't pack any of that extensibility. In this department, about the only things it's got built in that the Note 4 doesn't are the Samsung Pay hardware for wireless transactions and wireless charging. You can add the latter to the Note 4 with an aftermarket solution, but not all of those are created equal. Flip around to the front, and the thumb scanners are the next big thing you'll notice if you're like me and can't stand unlock codes. The S6's new press and hold scanner is much more convenient and less cumbersome than the Note 4's awkward swipe pad. Once those displays come to life, though, the Note 4 starts impressing again. 5.7 inches versus 5.1 doesn't sound like that big a boost, but the Note really does feel much more spacious, which makes the slight decrease in pixel density more than worth it. The Note 4 display also incorporates the Wacom digitizer that the S6 doesn't have, because it enables the most visible accessory that makes the Note the Note. The S Pen is much more than a stylus. It's a tool that unlocks a whole host of additional features on the Note. Some are total gimmicks, like Action Memo that turns your chicken scratch to actionable data when it works. But for adding flair to photos or drawing something from scratch, it can't be beat. It's also a handy highlighter for scripts or study guides. It's good for calling out a particular route on a map or a particular detail on a schematic. And as a precision tool for maneuvering and scrolling around the software, it's remarkably handy. Combined with the added screen size, the S Pen acts as a kind of mouse to give the Note a much more handheld computer feel than the smaller, sleeker S6. And even if you only use the S Pen once a month, it's still worth it, because it slides into its snug silo on the phone's bottom edge when you don't need it, essentially disappearing until the next time you do. There's more to Samsung's Super Stylus, so much that we even created an entire S Pen lesson video teaching you how to use it. But the important takeaway for this comparison is that the Note 4 has it, and the S6 doesn't. When we reviewed it in the fall, the Note 4 impressed us with its 16-megapixel optically stabilized camera, and the Galaxy S6 built on that by bringing a wider aperture and substantially improved software. The results are incredibly close in most settings. Samsung might have turned down the saturation just a titch on the S6 compared to the Note 4, but in broad daylight, that's about as much of a difference as I can see. Even in low light, the slight improvements to the S6 aren't immediately apparent. It's only when you look closer that you start to see the added detail and reduced noise of the newer phone's output, and its superior focus abilities when faced with bright lights in dark rooms. The bigger gulf between the two is in the interface. Even though our Note 4 is running Lollipop, it's not running the new Samsung software the S6 is sporting, so its viewfinder is the older, clunkier version. The S6 streamlines everything about the camera experience and couples that with a quick launch ability. You just double-click the home button and it starts up very quickly. That, plus the improved night shots and the upgraded front-facing camera, make the Galaxy S6 the superior shooter. By a narrow margin, though. And then there's everyday performance. Software responsiveness is quite good on both phones out of the box, though I'll stress that that's only true if you're using the default look on the S6. Running a custom theme can slow down performance quite a bit. You can't yet download themes for the Note 4, at least not for our Snapdragon-powered version here, so we'll have to wait to see whether that problem carries over, which seems likely. But the Note 4 isn't immune to slowdowns. Like most Android Lollipop devices, and Samsung phones in particular, it gets less and less smooth the longer you go between restarts. In our particular example, the S6 is much more responsive, but it's also the newer phone. Time may prove these to be tied. We'll see. If what you want is a phone that lasts you through the day, it's a lot less muddy. Buy a Note. I've seen some claims of exceptional battery life on the S6, but based on my own experience with 2 T-Mobile units and a Verizon model, and our editor-in-chief's experience with his own unit in Romania, I can't recommend the S6 to a road warrior. About 3.5 hours of screen-on time between charges is the max I've been able to hit, which is a far cry from the 5-hour screen-on time I can get from the Note. Plus, there's that removable battery on the latter if you want to carry a spare. The remaining points of comparison are very minor. I tend to prefer the Note 4 for playing games, both because of its larger screen and its rear-mounted speaker, which isn't as easy to accidentally block with a thumb. But as a daily carry, particularly with summer coming, I tend to prefer the S6, because it doesn't take up nearly as much space in a pocket, and it's more comfortable thanks to its rounded corners. I said this was an easier-than-ever comparison, and I meant it. That's because this year, the Galaxy S and the Galaxy Note are more different than they've ever been. If your priorities dictate a smartphone that's a sidekick rather than the center of your computing life, you'll probably prefer the S6. It's more conventional, it's simpler, it's easier to use one-handed, and its software is much more modern, even after applying the latest updates to both. The S6 is the phone you get if all you want is something modern that works well and you don't care about anything else. If, on the other hand, you're shopping for a smartphone that can do more, one that can take over for a tablet or even occasionally a notebook, something that you can expand and tweak and carry a spare battery for if you need to, the Note 4 remains champion standing. You get a lot more for your dollar. In fact, you get the best phablet money can buy, something that'll handle almost anything you can throw at it. If that still sounds tough, well, take solace from the fact that either way you go here, you'll be getting a terrific smartphone. Which is the better fit for you is entirely a question of how you plan to use it. This comparison was brought to you by Squarespace and its new version 7 drag-and-drop UI. Squarespace is the all-in-one solution that makes it fast and easy to create a beautiful